Hello, my friends, and welcome back. I'm Chisgule Gaming, and in today's video, sponsored by the makers of Rise of Kingdoms, I'm going to talk about the things that make a kingdom amazing. And I've been in that sort of kingdom before, but I'm going to do this evaluation based off of, in part, the kingdoms that are in this KVK. Because look, we're in KVK with 1365 and 2377. They're some of the strongest, if not the strongest, kingdoms in the game. Okay, and these things that kingdoms do, they're important to know. I mean, if you're a kingdom's leader, you may look at this video and go, wow, I hadn't thought about that. And if you're even just migrating to another kingdom, you may look at these things and go, oh, okay, that's interesting. I didn't even know to ask about that. And I'm going to be as honest as I can be, but I will evaluate my own kingdom, 2293, a group I have been with since its inception, in order to give you a sense of like what these things really mean. And the three categories we're going to look at are combat, coordination, and community. And look at that. I made them all start with C. Okay, so let's get rolling here. We're going to start with combat. And the first thing we're going to talk about, by the way, is going to be open field. But there's a bunch of things that are relevant to combat. There's open field, rally garrison, swarming capability, territory management, which is a crucial war function, and last but not least, farm filling. We'll get to all of that. But let's start with open field. Obviously, this is the thing that's most visible. Most people think about. The open field has several elements to it. Does your kingdom have meta combos on its players with competent war leads directing them and where to go, ensuring that players have the resources and speed ups they need to fight, which, by the way, some kingdoms will quite literally require you to send pictures of your speed ups and resources to ensure that you have enough of them. I believe 1960 does that. Okay. Just like for context, the best kingdoms do this and also have a small downtime window. Okay. Every kingdom, with the exception of the biggest, have downtime where people go to sleep. But in these kingdoms, 1365, in 2377, they do not sleep. It is 24/7, max power pushing to control field, rally garrison, and win the KVK. All right, which is why this is going to be a really exciting KVK to be in. I'm not going to lie; it's a little intimidating when you're not one of these kingdoms and you're up against them. But like, I'm hoping, by the way, tangent here, that these guys slug it out into one of the first zone openings and like the A kingdom slug it out in another one. It'd be, in my opinion, really lame if like we cross pair where like we've got to go battle the big fat Imperium, you know? Anyways, whatever. We'll see how it works out. So, combat. That's important for the open field. All that stuff we talked about. But the rally garrison situation is obviously critical. And these are things that people, I think, generally know to ask about if they're like migrating to a kingdom, okay? They'll know to ask like, hey, like, do you have meta rallies and garrisons, obviously? And, you know, the rally and garrison leads in your kingdom, and each kingdom should have them for every troop type. They not only need the commanders, they need the equipment, they need the armaments, they need the inscriptions, all right? They have to be pushing the envelope for what meta is. It is the force multiplier for your kingdom, for rallying, for garrisoning, okay? Now, if I were to rate my kingdom for open field on a scale that's comparable to these big fat Imperiums, okay, where these guys represent 10 out of 10, all right? I would say that for open field in 2293, we probably are like a 5 out of 10. And a 5 out of 10 is pretty respectable when these guys represent a 10 out of 10, okay? These guys are insane, where it's nonstop, 24/7, pedal to the metal, bottomless resources, bottomless speed ups. Like comparatively, I would say we're like a 5 out of 10. And these guys are 10 out of 10. Not that we don't have some players that punch at that level, but like overall as a kingdom, I think that's where we are. And that's represented in our kill point score. We're trillions less than these guys, right? And so it's not a criticism of my kingdom. It's, I think, a reality check of like, compared to these guys, here's where I think we're at. Now, that said, there is an additional capability that a lot of people don't talk about that I mentioned, and that is swarming capability, okay? And your ability to swarm flags dramatically changes the situations you can create. I mean, in our last KVK, we would just raw swarm flags without a rally, burn those flags, and it was a big deal, obviously. So swarming capability ranges from, we have one or two people who could swarm with the rally, and maybe they have a limited amount of power to do that with, all the way up to what these kingdoms can do, which is a 10 out of 10, which is we can bottomless swarm that flag as long as we control the field until it is burned, and that swarm will not stop for hours on end. I remember back in the day, you go on a journey through memory lane with me here, that like it was Baba and a couple others that were doing that for hours on end. And people were just like, wow, this is insane. And I forget who was running the defense on that. I can't remember which kingdom it was. But doesn't really matter. The point I'm trying to make is that understanding how much swarming a kingdom can do is actually a really, really big deal. And you can push a lot of value with those swarms. Okay. So in 2293, to try to give us a rank here, I would say that before we had like Fluffy Pony, Chadsky, myself, PTI, like you can go down this list. Before we had basically like Smash Squad, core Smash Squad migrate in here, I would put our swarming capability respectfully at a 3 out of 10 compared to these Imperiums that are like the 10 out of 10. With the addition of like Fluffy, Chadsky, myself, etc., I would probably put us closer to like a 5 or a 6 out of 10. We have a lot more swarming capability, and it dramatically changed the tone of our last KVK, as I was mentioning, right? And you may be like, wow, you're being really critical of your kingdom. Like, look, I'm just being honest on a power level scale. Like, if I said, oh, we're 10 out of 10 now, right? Like, and then we go into KVK with these guys, and your world would be rocked with the expectation mismatch and reality of that. So, like, these guys represent the 10 out of 10. And I think being a 5 or 6 out of 10 is pretty respectable on that kind of a comparison. All right, now this brings us to territory. And territory is something that I think our kingdom does extremely well. What is the relevance of territory? Well, it's not just about, hey, like, did you build the land? Okay. But also, do you have backup shells that can go to specific positions that are stocked with alliance credits so that you can like build tons of flags and tons of crystals to like build back into a position? Do you know how to create one flag choke points using resource pits and other things to funnel entire large chunks of the map through one flag that you can easily defend through your downtime? Do you know how to create fort walls? Do you know how to back flag so you don't lose large chunks of territory all at once? Do you know how to, again, manage and deploy many shells into a pass opening? I would say that actually we're probably like a 8 or a 9 out of 10 in this kingdom, which is an extremely high grade compared to, you know, the top Imperiums that are like 10 out of 10. I think that in 2293, our territory is generally very, very good. And it is a part of the reason I've been very happy with our performance in KVKs, because it is just a force multiplier for how good you are. And I've been in kingdoms where we didn't take advantage of good territory and other kingdoms did. And we take these awful trades running super long distances to cover territory in fights that we shouldn't have to cover. The difference is night and day. So knowing how and where to build territory, how and where to defend territory, game changing. Which brings us to farm fill. And I actually don't know how to rank our kingdom for farm fill, but I do want to talk about it because even though there is domain registration where you pick the accounts that will go into KVK together, I think that farm filling is still absolutely critical. And you can have millions, okay, upon millions of troops come from farms to fill garrisons and rallies to prevent losses from main accounts. So this is a question mark to me. I have no clue how good we are in 2293 at farm filling. But I know these kingdoms, oh man. I mean, look, I made videos in the past about how a meta kingdom has hundreds of farms on rotation entering into the domain registration so that you can send those troops in and do what they need to do. And in KVKs in the past, when I fought against 1960, they quite literally would just run rallies over and over and over, filled entirely with their farms before Kingsland opened. Because why lose troops on your main when you lose them from a farm? So farm filling is, in my opinion, an unfortunate but true reality of the way the game is played. I just like playing my one or two accounts and like I'm chilling, you know? But theoretically, it is optimal for like every player to have like a dozen farms that get rotated through KVK. As I get taxed over here. GG. Which brings us to a good topic change. Now we go from combat to coordination. All right. And there's a couple things that I think signal basic competence in a kingdom. The first level of basic competence is around things like having control over where mightiest governor sculptures go. Because at the end of the day, you do really need this to be your fighters. And your spenders and your fighters can be two completely different groups of people, okay? Things like having your holy sites distributed across your main shells. It's just like basic competence, okay? Having things like alliance mobilization minimums, in my book, is like a basic core competency of what a kingdom ought to be doing, okay? In order to ensure that every single time you get max rewards over here, okay? This is what I would consider basic levels of competence. And I would say we're probably like a 9 out of 10, right? I think maybe an 8 out of 10. Like there's some things we're missing, like we don't have minimums for alliance mobilization. I think we played with them in the past, but respectfully, like I think those are basic competence. Because, well, we don't need to go into how good these alliance mobilization rewards are. They're completely insane. So that brings us to having a well-run Ark of Osiris team. And this is something that I think is a very strong signal for how good your kingdom is at organizing. If you can do well in Ark, it stands to reason you would do well in KVKs. But it is not always true that good Ark kingdoms make good KVK kingdoms. And the greatest example of that is way back in the day. I remember we allied with a kingdom. I just can't remember what the kingdom number was. Someone help me out in the comments. But we allied with this kingdom that was this underdog Ark all-star. And like they showed up for 2 hours in Kingsland, packed it in, and like never showed up in the open field ever again. And they occasionally built flags because we requested they do it. And we lost that KVK. It was a disaster. So just because a kingdom's good in Ark does not mean necessarily they're good in KVK, but it does signal some amount of excellence they could have for KVK organization. I don't actually know how good our Ark team is because I stopped playing Ark long ago, in part because I need to do casting and it just became a conflict of interest. And also it became pretty time consuming to be doing that. Now, in addition, okay, to being a coordinated kingdom, you need to have a performance management system. I would put us probably at an 8 out of 10, which is a very good grade for performance management. Performance management means that you are aware of how every player performs. You have a system for ranking their kill point gain and their dead troop gain. You do things like systematically identify and manage players that are not performing. You systematically, if you're deleting siege, make sure that everybody has actually deleted their siege, et cetera, et cetera. You have controls in place to manage and eliminate low performers. And at the end of the day, this has been like a very contentious thing, even though it shouldn't be. But, you know, well, I won't make this comment. I'll simply say that if you want to win, your high performers need to be the ones that you cater to, not your low performers. And everybody, you know, when they first play, they're like, how dare you, you know, require people to log on every day. But like the people who log on once every 2 days or once every week are not the reason you win KVKs. In fact, they're the reason you lose KVKs. So you've got to reward the people who are on every day, right? And it's just, it becomes basic common sense once you've played this game enough. And if you haven't, like, you just need to trust me on this one, that if you cater to the people that don't help you win, you will stop winning. And it's like very obvious that that's the direction that's going to go. Now, in addition to all of that and helping people win, top tier kingdoms have account coaching, okay? And they help their players understand what combinations they should use in the open field and how to get better at actually grooming and growing their account. There's a bunch of ways that this can happen, whether it's getting in voice together, whether it's some sort of guides that are put out, even as far as when we're entering KVK, if there are things like, you know, certain skills that you choose or auxiliary skills, those sorts of things, the kingdom has recommendations. It has a perspective on what people should do, all right? So, and by the way, I assure you that these kingdoms are doing these things. 10 out of 10 grade on all these things, okay? Which brings us to community. And community is kind of an interesting one. Community can be as simple as having a Discord server. And I think this is just beyond critical for whether or not a team can organize itself. But beyond just having a Discord server, you actually need to have like decent people in your alliance, as weird as that sounds. And that means like people do not attack, belittle, create drama among your members. Like the actual personalities need to not suck. And I will say that one or two toxic individuals can absolutely destroy an entire kingdom if they're allowed to remain unchecked within that kingdom's gated community. And I have seen this on multiple occasions, that one or two toxic people, I'm not talking about your rogues. Your rogues are pretty straightforward. I'm talking about the people who masquerade as though they are doing good for the kingdom, but are actually like terrible humans. And I'm like not trying to judge them, but like they make life worse for everybody. Those people, they exist in many kingdoms. They need to be removed. And they, look, there's a couple things I'll say about this. First of all, it's some truisms. You ready for this? I'll hit you with the truth. Never argue with an idiot, because to an outsider, it's impossible to tell who's the idiot. Often these people somehow end up in leadership positions. And this is not some like underhanded way of talking about my kingdom. Okay. I'm not doing that. But I have been in kingdoms in the past where these people exist, and like, you can't argue with them. You can't win with them. Like, if they are allowed to retain their leadership positions, those kingdoms die. They just do. It takes incredibly strong leadership to identify who those people really are and solve and eliminate them. Right? And like, obviously I would not stay in this kingdom if I felt like those sorts of personalities were here. I just feel like I need to say, I'm not saying that my kingdom's got these one or two sneaky individuals that are lying and waiting or whatever. Right? But like, I've been in a lot of kingdoms that have had those people and they ruined those kingdoms. Okay. And one thing on the topic of creating drama that I thought we did extremely well in Call of Dragons, another game made by the makers of Rise of Kingdoms, is that the R5 around election time said, hey, look, I understand everybody's got strong opinions, but if you express those opinions about politics in Alliance chat, I will set you straight, and you do not want me to set you straight. This is not a place for politics. Politics are important, but not, I mean, now I'm adding on my opinion. Politics are obviously important, but that's not why people play games, right? It's like when you're walking down the street and someone's trying to like proselytize their viewpoint to you, like that's not why I logged in, okay? And it's gonna basically ostracize all the people who disagree or didn't log in or don't want to be there for the political rant. Like they're not here for that. So I think it is a very, very strong sign when an alliance can be like, hey, like we're here to have fun together. We're a community. Keep that out of here, man. And there's only a couple more things that I want to talk about here for community. One of those things is mentality. And I think, Chisgule is very well known for having a super, super strong mentality, and a good mentality. If I pull up the rankings here instead of the individual stuff, right? Like he's generally very positive, and optimistic, and like keeps people aligned and focused on like what we need to do. And it's very, very easy for negative mindsets, cowardly mindsets to take over and spread. And these things are a toxic disease that spread like wildfire. Like, so as an example, when we got matched with these kingdoms, right? Like Chisgule made a point of going into Alliance chat and saying like how awesome it is that we're in this KVK that is going to be so much fun, right? And I think it would be easy to look at these kingdoms and just be super intimidated. And you're not wrong to feel intimidated, right? But like, we've got strong allies. This is a really cool situation. These kingdoms are not taking the cowardly route, as has happened to me in the past, where the big Imperium's ally and they go wreck everybody else. This is a cool situation, and it's a really cool KVK. But when you're in a good kingdom, you've got people that bring those super positive mentalities and mindsets to the rest of the group, and they elevate the group. And to the two last things I'll say that great kingdoms and great leadership does is they solve problems, not blame. I'll say it again. Solve problems, not blame. Doesn't matter how we got to where we got to. Let's solve the problem and let's make sure it doesn't happen again. And they also understand how to set expectations appropriately. So when Chisgule comes in, and he's not a leader in this kingdom, like he's not an officer, but like when he goes into voice chat and he's like, this is going to be an awesome KVK, he's not saying it's going to be easy. He's not going to say like, yeah, swinging on a 365 is going to be like a joyride, right? But he's saying that like overall, this is going to be a really cool experience. And like, you need to set the expectation appropriately. Like these are going to be hard kingdoms. These are very hard kingdoms to fight against. If we have to rally 365, it's going to be hard to do. But like, also we've got some of the best rally leads and garrisons in the game, right? Like Chadsky's got really good stuff. And I'm not even talking about myself. I've got good stuff. I wouldn't say I'm like one of the very best, but I'm like not far either, right? But like, I'm talking about Fluffy Pony and, you know, I'm talking about Maury with his, you know, combination of infantry and leadership stuff where like his mixed garrisons slap, bro. What I'm trying to say is you've got to set expectations appropriately. And I think great leaders can tell you the truth of the situation, which is that this is going to be a really hard KVK, but also it's going to be one of the most awesome KVKs of the year. Probably, right? Like we'll see what happens, but like this could be a top 5 or top 10 KVK this year that happens, which is really cool to be a part of it, even though our kingdom, right, is ranked over here for how this is going. And I'm not ashamed of this. We don't push in this event. We specifically do not push in this event. Our leadership says, hey, save your speed ups for the field, save your resources for the field, and get ready for the fun. And like the fun's going to happen, man. So subscribe so you don't miss it. All right. This KVK is going to be insane. If you want the breakdown of all the kingdoms that are here, definitely check the card in the end screen, which will be over here in just a second. You should watch that video because I think that at least on paper, this matchmaking is like a real triumph. And I think it represents how much better the matchmaking has potentially gotten. I mean, I don't know how all the other matches went, but I feel like this match is just fire. 2 big Imperium camps, 2 big non-Imperium camps with a balance of kill points to potentially be able to hang. We'll see how it goes. Only then will we really know, right? Like reality is going to happen. And that's a part of the magic of this game. It's like reality hits and whatever your worldview was, expect it to change, boys and girls. Hope you enjoyed the vid. Until next time, you have fun smashing your enemies. Take care, everybody.